Well, when I look at people's lives and I say, what makes people successful? I love, wickedly smart people. I love intelligence. But you and I both know there are a lot of very smart people that can't find their way out of a paper bag,
That is
right?
true.
What I found is, in my own experience, is the number one ingredient is hunger. If somebody's got a hunger that doesn't go away, not a hunger to lose some weight for the summer, I'm talking about hunger to be more, to do more, to create more, to become something, to give something that matters. That kind of hunger that doesn't go away. That's what you see in, like, I'm sure you know Richard Branson. He's a good friend, Richard is 74 years old and he has the same hunger as he did when he was 16 starting Virgin in a crypt. You know what I mean? That's there. Anybody who has that component that's alive in them is going to succeed. And hunger, though, usually comes from not having things go so well. I mean, I come from an environment where I had 4 different fathers, and the common denominator I thought at that stage was lack of money because we had no money for food. But, someone was interviewing me the other day. I just announced, I started out early on when I was 11 years old. I had people come to my house on Thanksgiving. We had no money and no food. No food. We had crackers and peanut butter. That's what we would have had. But, Thanksgiving, everybody's having a big feast, so it really makes it pretty daunting. And my parents were saying things to each other that you can never take back. And I have a younger brother, 5 years younger sister, 7 years younger, and I'm trying to make sure they don't hear this. And this knock comes to the door, and I open the door, and there's this tall guy holding 2 giant bags of groceries. And then on the floor, on the ground, he had this uncooked frozen turkey in a pan that he'd obviously carried up there first. And he said, "Is your father home?" And I'm like, "Just one moment," right? And so I run to get my dad. They're screaming at each other. I said, "The door's for you." He goes, "You answer it." I said, "I answered. He has to speak to you." "Who is it?" "I don't know." And I'm just as a little boy, right, 11 years old, just like waiting to see his face, thinking it's going to be the happiest moment in our lives. And my dad opened the door, and he was not a happy man. He said, "We don't take charity." And he just went to slam the door in the guy's face. And the guy had, leaned in slightly, so it hit his shoulder and bounced off. And that made my dad even more frustrated. And he said, sir, I said, "I'm just the delivery guy. Everybody has tough times, and somebody knows you're having tough times, and they want you to have a great Thanksgiving with your family." And my father said, "We don't take charity," and went to do it again. And this time the guy, because he leaned in, his foot now got there, and his foot hit the door, and it bounced open. My dad's getting madder. And then the guy saw my father and saw me. And he said something. I thought my father was going to punch him in the face. He said, "Sir," he said, "don't make your family suffer because of your ego." And I can still see the veins on the side of my father's face, neck. I thought for sure he was going to punch him. And he took the food, didn't say anything, threw it on the table, and slammed the door, and never said thank you. And I tell you that story because it changed my life. Because I believe I didn't know it then. I figured it out later because I had to. My father left our family about 2 weeks after that. And to me, he had 4 fathers, but he's the one who adopted me. He's the one whose name I carry. He's the one I love the most, quite frankly, I had the most time with. It's the most inspirational for me. But he left. And why did he leave? Because there's 3 decisions we make every moment of our lives. The first decision we're making is, what are we going to focus on? Right now, there's millions of things we could focus on. People listening can be focused on what they're doing, what we're saying, whether it matters or not, a million things, right? But we only focus on a small band of things. And whatever we focus on, we experience in life. And so the first decision, what to focus on, I know what he focused on. He focused on that he had not fed his family because he kept saying it. But then the second decision you make, as soon as you focus on something, is you give it a meaning. Is this the end of the beginning? If you think it's the end of a relationship, you're going to behave very different than the beginning. Is this person dissing me? Are they challenging me? Are they coaching me? Or are they actually loving me? Whatever meaning you create produces emotion, and those emotions control your third decision, which is, what are you going to do? And I tell you that because he focused on, didn't feed his family. The worst part was the meaning. The meaning for him was, I'm worthless, and he decided to leave our family. That day, I had a very different experience. I focused on there was food, what a concept. But then secondly, the meaning is what changed my life. It's why I'm sitting here right now. The meaning I got was, wow, strangers care. My father always said, we grew up in an environment on the other side of the tracks, quite literally. And, I thought it was a wealthy community. It was a lower middle class community, but compared to us, they were wealthy. And my dad would always say, no one cares. And it's like, I had evidence that someone cared so much, and they didn't even want credit. They fed my family. And so it's like, if strangers care about me and my family, I'm going to care about strangers. And I made a decision right then at 11 years old, I'm going to feed people when I get older. And so when I was 17, I fed 2 families, and it was so emotionally rewarding. Then I went to 4 and 8, then I got to 1 million. Then I got to 4 million, 2 million from my foundation, 2 million from me. And then in the last 10 years, about 8 years or 10 years ago I started, it took me 8 years, I said, I'm going to provide 1 billion meals here in the United States. And we did that in 8 years, I'm proud to be. 100 million meals a year. I did it through Feeding America as my partner. And all that came, to answer your question, because of the turmoil, as you described it. In other words, I said to someone the other day, I don't know, we're not only fed 1 billion, but now, because of the war in Ukraine, most people are unaware of it. The news doesn't even talk about it. But that's the breadbasket for most of Africa. So there are 11 nations that are on the realm or on the edge of famine. And then, we need, obviously, fertilizer. 50% of the world's food comes from fertilizer. The WWF doesn't want people to use it, but we need it. And because of the war, most of it comes from Russia, so the price has gone through the roof. So normally there's 80 million people a year that are on the verge of starvation. This year it's 350 million. And so I decided, I met with the head of the food program for the UN. It was, a gentleman here that was unbelievable. And what he'd done, he won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago for feeding people. So he and I joined together and created 100 billion meals. I said, how many do we need to bridge the gap? He said about 70 billion. So let's do 100 billion meals in 10 years. I did 1 billion. I wasn't a billionaire when I started. I said, so I've grown, obviously, to make that happen. But all we need is 99 poor people like me, and we can do this, right? And so we went out to do it, and we announced a few days ago, we hit 30 billion meals already in the first 2 years. Most people thought it would be totally impossible. So we're going to make that happen. But here's what I wanted you to get. If I was a well-fed child, do you think I'd be working this hard? I know, I'm proud to be a good human being. I believe I'm a good human being, but I don't think I would have that same drive. So I think hunger often comes, not always, often comes from having gone through enough pain. Like, I've suffered enough. I don't want somebody else to suffer.
So